One kid talks to a plank of wood and it talks back. Another one has convinced an entire cul-de-sac that quarters are worth more than dollar bills. A third has a bedroom where labels point to other labels in an infinite loop. You watched this for years and called it comedy. Psychologists call it something else entirely. Today we're opening the case files on every kid in the cul-de-sac, what actually is wrong with them, and why the show knew exactly what it was doing. Here's what most people do not realize. Ed, Edd n Eddy ran for a decade, 69 episodes, one movie, and in all of that time, no adults ever appeared on screen. Not one parent, not one teacher, not one authority figure of any kind. The official explanation was that it took place during summer break. The unofficial explanation, the one hiding in the frame of every single episode, is that this wasn't summer break. This was a contained observation experiment, and every kid inside it was displaying symptoms that real clinicians are trained to recognize. Let's open the files, character by character, case by case. Case 1. Ed. Developmental regression with specific phobia pattern. Ed is the strongest kid in the cul-de-sac. He can lift houses, eat entire mattresses, respond to physical threats with zero hesitation. But mentally, Ed operates at the level of a much younger child, sometimes a preschooler. This is not just being dumb, this is developmental regression, a condition where psychological stressors cause an individual to retreat to an earlier developmental stage. Ed's speech patterns, his dependency on Sarah for basic instructions, his complete inability to function without external direction, these are not jokes, they are symptoms. But here's where things get even crazier. Ed has very specific triggers that send him into full dissociative episodes. Gravy. The word gravy sends him into a fugue state where he screams uncontrollably and physically tears his environment apart. What most people do not realize is that specific phobia responses of this intensity in an individual already displaying regression markers point toward a traumatic anchoring event involving that stimulus. Someone sat in a writer's room and gave a cartoon character a PTSD trigger disguised as a running gag. There's also the buttered toast obsession, the chickens, the monster movies, each one a compulsive fixation pattern that Ed uses to regulate. He can't regulate internally, so he attaches to external objects with ritualistic intensity. You're not watching a dumb kid eat toast. You're watching self-medication through sensory fixation. And then there's the comic books. Ed believes the comics are real. Not pretends, believes. He constructs an entire alternate reality inside them where monsters are coming, where he's the hero, where the rules of the cul-de-sac don't apply. That's a dissociative fantasy defense mechanism. The real world doesn't work for him, so he built one that does. That's case 1. Case 2. Eddy. Narcissistic personality structure with compensatory grandiosity. Now we move to Eddy, and I'm not gonna lie, Eddy is the most psychologically complex character in the cul-de-sac, believe it or not. On the surface, Eddy looks like a con artist. He runs scams, he lies pathologically, he manipulates everyone around him. He has an ego the size of an entire neighborhood and nothing to back it up. Easy diagnosis, right? Antisocial personality, conduct disorder, move on. Wrong, because the show gives us something most cartoons don't. Eddy's home life, and it changes everything. In the series finale movie, we see Eddy's older brother. The brother that Eddy has been talking about for years. The brother Eddy is mythologized as cool, successful, untouchable. The brother who arrives and is immediately, explicitly, physically abusive to Eddy. Not a joke, not slapstick. Abuse, played straight. What Eddy has been doing the entire series clicks into place. The scams, the lies, the constant need to be the center of attention, the obsession with jawbreakers as status symbols. None of it was about greed, it was compensatory grandiosity. Every scam Eddy ran was an attempt to prove he wasn't the worthless kid his brother told him he was. Psychologists call this narcissistic injury response. When a child is systematically devalued by a primary figure, they develop one of two patterns. They internalize the worthlessness, or they construct a false self that is powerful, important, and untouchable. Eddy built the second one, and he dragged Ed and Double D into it because he needed witnesses. A false self only works if someone else believes it. The Jawbreakers. The Jawbreakers were never about candy. They were proof. Every jawbreaker Eddy obtained was evidence that the scam worked, that he was valuable, that the false self was real. And he never ate them alone, he displayed them, because the point wasn't consumption, the point was validation. Someone in that writer's room understood narcissistic injury at a clinical level and built a 9-year-old con artist around it. It's not a cartoon character, that's a case study. Case 3, Double D, the smart one, the organized one, the one who alphabetizes his sticky notes. What most people do not realize is that Double D's behavior is not a personality quirk. It is a textbook obsessive-compulsive presentation with comorbid social anxiety disorder. Start with the compulsions. Every object in Double D's room is labeled. The labels have labels. There is a system for everything, and everything must be in its system. When the system breaks, when Ed and Eddy show up and disrupt his environment, you can see the physical distress. He doesn't just get annoyed, he gets dysregulated. His breathing changes, his speech patterns accelerate. He needs to restore order before he can function again. The hat. Double D never removes the hat. Not once in 69 episodes. When it comes off in the movie, we see, briefly, a patch of hair. The reveal is underwhelming. The fixation was never about what was under the hat. The hat was a security object. Removing it meant exposing vulnerability, and Double D's entire psychological architecture is built around control. The hat was the one variable he could always control. Now the social anxiety. Double D cannot function in unstructured social situations. He scripts conversations, he prepares, he tries to plan for every contingency, and when the plan fails, when the Cul-de-Sac kids react unpredictably, he freezes or flees. This is social anxiety disorder with compulsive preparatory rituals. He's not shy, he's managing an internal system that tells him one mistake means total social annihilation. The tragedy of Double D is that he's the most self-aware character in the show. He knows Ed is regressed, knows Eddy is compensating, knows the scams won't work, and goes along with all of it anyway. Because the alternative, being alone with his own thoughts and no system to organize them, is worse than following two broken kids into another failed scheme. He labeled everything, except what was actually wrong. Cases 4 and 5. Sarah and Jimmy. We're doing these together because they form a chain. Sarah is the cul-de-sac's dictator. She screams, threatens, and physically dominates every child in the neighborhood, including her own brother. On the surface, intermittent explosive disorder. Quick temper, disproportionate responses, aggression as a first resort. Easy. But look closer. Sarah's rage is almost always triggered by one thing, her authority being questioned. Someone challenges her control of Ed, of Jimmy, of the situation. And she escalates immediately to maximum force. This is not random anger. This is a dominance behavior pattern consistent with children who have experienced inconsistent caregiving. They learn that only force guarantees safety, so force becomes the default. Now Jimmy. Jimmy is Sarah's friend, her project, her dependent. He faints, he cries, he requires constant reassurance. He cannot make decisions without Sarah's input. When separated from her, he collapses into helplessness. This is dependent personality disorder in a child. An attachment pathology where the child bonds to a dominant figure and cannot function autonomously. And the thing is, Sarah needs Jimmy just as much as Jimmy needs Sarah. Jimmy gives Sarah's dominance a purpose. Without someone to protect, she's just the angry kid. With Jimmy, she's the protector. They're not friends, they're a symbiotic pathology loop, and the show never resolves it, because in real life, it rarely gets resolved either. Case 6, Johnny. The kid who talks to a piece of wood. Everyone calls this the joke character, the weird one, the one who has a plank of wood with a face drawn on it and treats it as a fully autonomous person. Plank has opinions. Plank makes decisions. Plank judges you. Johnny consults Plank before doing anything significant. Here's what most people do not realize. Johnny's relationship with Plank is not a running gag. It is a consistent, elaborate, maintained illusion that persists across every single episode without interruption. Johnny never breaks character. He never acknowledges Plank isn't real. In clinical terms, this maps onto schizotypal personality disorder, a condition characterized by magical thinking, odd beliefs, unusual perceptual experiences, and difficulty with social relationships. Johnny doesn't have friends. He has Plank. The other kids tolerate him at best. His social eccentricities push everyone away, which reinforces the isolation, which deepens the dependence on Plank. But here's the part that should genuinely make you pause. In the movie, Johnny is the only character who doesn't participate in the Eddy's brother's scheme. He watches from the outside. He sees through it, because when your entire social existence is built around an elaborate internal world, you develop a skill most people don't have. You recognize fiction when you see it. Plank knew what Ed and Eddy didn't, and Johnny was the only one listening. That's not the punchline, that's the diagnosis. Case 7, 8, and 9. The Kanker sisters, Lee, Marie, and May. The Kankers live in a trailer park outside of the Cul-de-Sac. They appear, they pursue the Eds, they kiss them against their will, and they leave. The show treats this as comedy, reverse harassment. The boys run, the girls chase. Hilarious. Let me reframe this for you. 3 older children repeatedly pursue 3 younger children with the explicit goal of non-consensual physical contact. They invade their space. They corner them. They make demands. They do this every time they appear. The Eds respond with genuine terror. Nobody helps them. This is conduct disorder with antisocial features. The Kankers display no empathy for their targets, no remorse for their actions, no interest in the damage they cause. They operate as a unit, a pack structure where aggression is social currency. Lee leads, Marie and May follow, and the target is always the weakest available. What's especially telling is how they treat each other. The Kankers fight constantly. Physical violence, verbal abuse, but it never breaks the unit. Because in antisocial peer groups, conflict is not dysfunction. Conflict is bonding. You prove you belong by showing you can take it and give it back. The show aired this on Cartoon Network for 10 years and nobody raised an eyebrow, because it was framed as girls chasing boys. And that's funny, right? Someone sat in a meeting and made that determination professionally. And now that note exists in history. Gone. Case 10, Rolf. And this one's different. Rolf is not disordered. Rolf is displaced. He's the son of a shepherd, raised on a culture nobody in this cul-de-sac understands, and he navigates it with more psychological stability than anyone else in the neighborhood. Yes, he has a turnip festival. Yes, he believes in the son of a shepherd honored code. Yes, he refers to mundane objects with elaborate pastoral names. But here's the thing, Rolf has consistent values. He has a clear sense of self. He has boundaries he enforces without rage. When Eddy scams him, Rolf doesn't collapse or rage or dissociate. He administers justice, proportionally, and moves on. When Kevy bullies him, Rolf defends himself and then lets go. When someone genuinely needs help, Rolf helps them. In a cul-de-sac full of undiagnosed disorders, Rolf is the control group. The one child who arrived with a functioning internal framework and maintained it despite everything around him. He's not the weird one, he's the healthy one. And the fact that the audience saw him as equally strange as everyone else, that tells you something about how the show trained you to see pathology as normal. Let's pull back now and look at the full picture. Every case in this file follows the same architecture. Ed regressed, Eddy compensated, Double D ritualized, Sarah dominated, Jimmy attached, Johnny constructed a reality, the Kankers predated, and Rolf, the one stable variable, watched all of it from the outside. What kind of environment produces this many distinct presentations in one geographic location? The kind of environment where no adults are present to intervene, where no diagnosis is made, where no treatment is offered, where children are left to develop coping mechanisms in isolation and those mechanisms harden into disorders. That's the lore. The cul-de-sac wasn't a neighborhood. It was an observation tank. And 16 kids inside it were building their own prisons out of jawbreakers and label makers and pieces of wood because nobody was coming to let them out. Not speculation, documented patterns hiding in 69 episodes of a show about summer break. Drop it in the comments. Which diagnosis landed hardest for you? The one you recognized and someone you grew up with? And if you want the next case file, another show hiding clinical psychology behind cartoon logic, hit subscribe. The files stay open.